YouTube, it's Faye, and for today's video, this is part 3 of the Supercharger installation series. And I am so glad that I broke this series up into 3 parts because I actually installed the Supercharger all the way back in May. And today, it is November. So we've put a ton of miles on the truck. We just got back from SEMA. We actually drove all the way there and all the way back. We camped the entire way. We put about 3,500 miles on the truck in just that trip. Then we also had the opportunity to put the truck in the booth. So very unconventional, un-SEMA-like booth vehicle, but that's all right. It was really fun. We had a really good time. So today I'm just gonna be doing some maintenance on the truck. I'm just gonna do an oil change. I'm gonna change out the thermostat. The TRD thermostats are no longer available for this truck. I couldn't find them anywhere. But the next best thing is this Mishimoto thermostat, which is actually 160 degree. And the reason why I'm using this is because, once again, we are in Texas, we are in the desert. And one thing that I did notice while we were driving, especially when we were idling, so the truck did get a little hot. So this is one of the things that was recommended to me by a former TRD engineer. And he was like, absolutely do this, go for it. So I'm gonna be changing this out today. Now in part 2, you did see me reinstall the water neck with the OE thermostat still attached, but just know, I have since decided to upgrade, and I will link this in the description below. Another thing that I'd like to mention, hindsight is 2020, is the TRD air filter. Now, much like a lot of other components that are typically found on almost all OEM vehicles, Toyota doesn't manufacture everything themselves, right? They farm it out. Like Aisin makes our transmissions, most of them, and Denso makes a lot of our sensors. So similar to that, TRD did not necessarily engineer this air filter, but an aftermarket company did. However, a human was in charge of oiling said filter. Now in the instructions, it doesn't say anything about us having to oil the air filter, so I did not put any oil on it. What I did not realize, but after talking to this TRD engineer, I did realize that all of these are gonna come pre-oiled, and that was done by humans. So I do want to make note that right before we left on our trip to SEMA, like literally 24 hours before we should have been packing our bags and hitting the road, I actually got a last minute lean code, which freaked me out. Talk about one of the worst codes that you want to get right before a massive road trip. The thing that really confused me actually was it was only a lean bank 1. So I did all the typical things. I smoke tested the entire system. I looked for leaks, looked for exhaust leaks. I was checking to make sure that our oxygen sensors were okay. And I was like, man, like what is going on? I don't even know really why I did this because I had already like ruled it out in my mind, but I pulled the mass airflow sensor and realized that it was saturated in oil. It's like, man, what is this? And the first time ever in my life, ever, I cleaned a mass airflow sensor. And this is something that you actually can do for Toyotas, but I started out in Volkswagen Audi land, and as soon as you spray cleaner on a mass airflow sensor on a Volkswagen or Audi, or at least an older one like I used to work on, it would destroy them. So randomly I cleared the fuel trims, cleared all the codes, put the mass airflow sensor in, and believe it or not, everything went back to normal, and that ended up being the issue, which really stressed me out. It stressed me out for most of the trip because you have a lean code bank 1. You'd think the mass airflow sensor, a single mass airflow sensor, would affect both banks. In this case, it didn't. My fuel trims on bank 2 were almost perfect, and the fuel trims on bank 1, my long-term fuel trim was over 26%. So that was super crazy. So that's just another thing that I want to mention going into this. Anyway, those are the things that I wanted to cover before getting started on this video. And now let's jump right into it. So last I left you, I was going to reinstall the exhaust. I decided to pull off that passenger side exhaust manifold because I wanted to install a wideband. Because when you're changing a bunch of stuff with the vehicle, it's really important to make sure that the tune is good and that you're not running lean or rich. So I wanted a visual of that. And then we also did add a boost gauge, which is something that the Supercharger provides a provision for. So you can see back here is my sensor for the boost pressure gauge. And I just tapped into this nipple right here that is built in to the Supercharger housing for exactly this purpose. So I'll be covering both of the gauges in this video. I'll be wrapping up the install in this video, and I'll, of course, at the very end, show you our new dyno numbers. We're gonna go back to the dyno at Fuel Injection Specialties, and you'll see what we got after all this work. Aside from, of course, it just looking totally sick and sounding freaking phenomenal. So, all right, let's hop back into it. Sorry for the long intro, y'all. Next, I'm actually going to remove this exhaust manifold once I figure out exactly where I want to put the wideband. Bung! So I do have actually an old Innovate air fuel ratio sensor. Not old, but just one I'm not gonna use anymore off of one of my Supras, and I'm gonna put it on this exhaust manifold. I'm gonna actually put it somewhere right behind the stock O2 sensor on the passenger side. Now in theory, both the passenger and the driver's side should be the same. I'll probably put one on the driver's side too eventually and monitor both banks because that's just my personality. But it's really important that you put these, any wideband, if you have factory catalytic converters, especially on an older vehicle. By the way, don't mind the noise on the roof. A storm is a brewing. So we've got the trees scraping the roof. So that's what's happening there. But anyway, as I was saying, you can see the factory catalytic converter back there, especially on an older vehicle with stock cats. They can throw off your readings. So you want to make sure that your wideband is before the stock catalytic converters. And you may think, well, don't you want it to read both banks? So at the Y pipe where they come together. Well, no, because then it's after both cats. In Innovate's instructions, they also tell you it's got to be before the catalytic converter. Also, we want between the 9 o'clock and the 3 o'clock position, and at least 24 inches downstream of the exhaust port. That's going to be the tough one. That's the one that I don't think I'm going to be able to do. But if we think about it, though, it's like, okay, is that factory one 24 inches from the exhaust port? And if I'm looking at this and just like where is practical for it to sit, get proper airflow, and also for me to be able to install it, get it in and out, I'm thinking it's gonna be right there. That's the winning place right there. Okay, now to get a marker in there. You can see the exhaust manifold is just coated in PB Blaster, so hopefully I have no problem getting this out. If you can see all the way up here, I can barely reach, but that is where the oxygen sensor connector is here at the back of the cylinder head. So I'm gonna disconnect that. Okay, there we go. Removing the passenger side exhaust manifold on the Tacoma is delightfully easy. I get the 3 top nuts from up above and I disconnected the 10mm oil dipstick bracket bolt. Then I got the other 3 bottom nuts from underneath. I do this entirely with hand tools because I like to feel every bit of thread and do a little status check with the studs there. Then I remove the manifold from the rest of the pipe by undoing this flange and bracket, as well as another one further back, and getting those exhaust donuts on order. Then I snake the manifold out from the bottom. We have the exhaust, we have the bung, and we have the Brandon.
What?
To bring this to Danny at Hill Country Performance and Machine, because this is gonna be a tricky weld.
I won't drop it.
Uh-oh.
So you can see there's 2 layers in here. So we're not gonna just cut and put in a bung on top of the outside layer, which would be the easiest thing to do. You can see how the factory has a bigger weld there. And I see how they did it now. They went ahead and put the bung in first, and then there's a seam right here. What they did is they put the outer layer, slid it over, and then welded it around. But it is a lot bigger weld. You can even see the hump there. So what I went ahead and did is machined a little step. So I made a little lip so that that would just actually drop right in. So I know it's going to be difficult, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to TIG weld this to this inside part first. Get that all welded in. Then I'm going to come in and fill all around the outside, and it'll actually look a lot like the factory one. And it'll be done the correct way. It'll be double welded, inside and outside. All right, we welded the inside already, so let's get to the outside. All right, it's officially done. There it is, all the way around. And if you look at it, compared to the factory Toyota one, I did say so myself, I'm kind of liking that. All right, so there we go. It can be done, and it can be done correctly.
Well, 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 would you look who it is?
What's that?
Whoa, he's got stuff. What you got? Woo! Woo! Yay, Danny! I had no idea what a pain that welding was actually gonna be. Get this old gasket out of there. Obviously, we are going with new Toyota. Yep. I almost used the Fail Pro because this was next day on Amazon and very cheap, but I don't want to do this job again. I know better. Just get the multi-layer steel. Just do it, people. All right, now to install my secondary cat. And these exhaust gaskets are two totally different part numbers, even though they look almost identical. They look identical aside from the color. So I learned today that the front one is greenish bluish and the rear one is pinkish. I'm ashamed to admit how long it took me to figure out the difference between the two. And I decided that it was the ridge depth. Still not really 100% sure, but they're so close. All right, I'm gonna get this installed. It's gonna be dark and weird under there and you're not gonna wanna see it anyway. Heck yeah. Look who got the exhaust back in. Everyone is all snugged up, good to go. Our oxygen sensors are back installed and look at our beautiful little bung. Just there sitting, little plug in it, waiting for our dyno day all the way back there. And we're also gonna get a new sensor. So after the dyno day, we're gonna put a wideband in there. All right, moving on. What's next? Yes, I know I did not film any of that install, but you know what I'm gonna say? Installation is just a reverse of removal. But at least in that clip, I did show the rear section with that catalytic converter that I did pull out in order to get the exhaust manifold out. There just wasn't enough clearance to move those studs past like that little flange. And I thought it was really important to show the bung being welded in because I've seen so many posts on the forums saying that you cannot add an aftermarket O2 sensor to the factory exhaust manifolds. Now you see that it's possible, but obviously it was above my skill level. I had to go to Danny. Someday I aspire to be able to do stuff like that, but I'm not there just yet. Now at this point too, I haven't installed my aftermarket sensor yet. I just have the bung there with the plug in it. And that's because as soon as we get to the dyno, I'm gonna pull the plug back out so that Fuel Injection Specialties can put in their own air-fuel ratio sensor for their dyno and for their equipment. And then afterwards, I got the truck home and I installed the sensor after. So that's a little catch up from part 2. And now I'm hopping back into the supercharger installation and I'm addressing the cooling system. Okay, where were we? All right, we're gonna install the fan and shroud, hoses, and throttle body. Cool, okay. And I'm sure you know what I'm gonna say here. Installation is just the reverse of removal. You do have to slide both the fan and the shroud in together as a unit, but then I will hang the fan on the water pump studs to get it safely out of the way, then attach the fan shroud with the two 10mm bolts, or in my case, the four 10mm bolts with the upgraded CSF radiator. Don't forget to clip the transmission cooler lines to the driver's side, then tightening those four 12mm fan nuts using the double wrench method that I show in great detail in my water pump replacement video. Got my fan back on, got my shroud back on. There's still time left in the day. We are doing good, alrighty. We are keeping with the same top radiator hose. So, we'll make sure there's no dirt in there. Goodness gracious me. I'm still a little iffy on this spacer. I'm worried that after all this, it's gonna leak. But I mean, we won't know until we fill it with coolant, really. Da-da-dum. Installing the throttle body, I like to connect up the hoses first, then start the bolts by hand, go back in very gently with my battery power, and then do a final tighten with a torque wrench. Do not over torque these. The torque specification for the throttle body is 8 foot-pounds, people. 8 foot-pounds! And let's plug in our electrical connector. Now, this is our new lower radiator hose, and they also provide these two screw clamps for us to install this, and they specify in the repair manual to make sure that we put these in the certain direction so they don't hit anything. All right, we'll note that. And then also, we've got to cut one end of this. Cut and remove 2.5 inches from the bottom of the new lower radiator hose. Okay, 2.5. Hey, I mean, I'm no carpenter, but that's close, right? I'm gonna test fit it first, just verify this is actually the right side. Oh yeah, okay, that's definitely that side. And yes, that side is definitely too low. Okay, all right, I'm happy with this. For cost saving, I think they must have used a hose with a pre-existing part number and then just repurposed it as a part of this kit, thus the need to modify it to fit a little bit. Now we have a couple other cooling hoses to install. So I got the lower radiator hose on and I'm gonna tighten it right here through that perfect little hole in the wheel well with my little 8mm socket. Uh-oh. Do you see what I am seeing? Oh, FJ specific parts. That's not gonna reach. Okay, and that really is the only place that that can go. I mean, even if I move it a little bit more that way, that's not gonna make up for that space. So, well, let's see what else we have in the kit here. Okay, so this is what we have left of like the molded hoses. So this one looks like it's still gonna fit. Although I'm gonna have to work some magic with this and maybe some other bulk hose that I have. And I also have this and then this corrugated section. So give me just a minute to figure this stuff out and I'll come right back to you when I find a solution for all of our coolant hoses. All right, so let's talk about these coolant hoses. I did the best that I could with what I had. There's a couple things I'm gonna do differently, but what we got going on right now is just a proof of concept. I'm not sure if you can tell, but there's been a drastic change in background noise. The night bugs are out, and I leave bright and early in the morning for an event in Chicago, and then I go to Phoenix to pick up my Supra. So really, this is my only chance to finish this up before it sits here like a rock for 10 days. So I kind of wanted to finish it. So let me show you where I'm at right now. This little hose here did fit just fine, no kinks. We're happy with this. I used some bulk hose. Now this is the one that I don't like, and I will be replacing this because the junction of where they are, there's like a little plastic connector piece here. I don't like that, and also where it is, I think that this is just like asking to break. So I will be replacing this. I just want to sort of get the truck fired up, make sure there's no fuel leaks, make sure there's no coolant leaks. I'm especially concerned about this. So yeah, this is proof of concept, people. But I do like the routing of where the hose is going. So I've got the bulk hose going underneath and around, and then it's connected, and there we go. Actually, this is not bulk hose. This is the one that was long, cut to fit, but then had these two ends. So this actually did work out pretty nicely. And really, I just followed this diagram. These are all just important diagrams that I wanted to just have at my disposal. So I just screenshotted and then printed all these diagrams and put them on this piece of paper. And yeah, put it in my 3-ring binder, and I'll put that in my folder. So that's where we are at with coolant hoses. Now I gotta fill the darn thing with coolant. But I'm actually excited to see what the air intake looks like with all of this. So I'm gonna put the intake box back on first, and then I'll fill it with coolant. All right, now we got that piece on. Time to put this part of the air box back on. Continuing on the theme of installation as the reverse of removal, I'm sliding the intake tube back into its hole on the passenger side fender, then tightening these two 12mm bolts that hold it into place. And are we gonna put any old nasty air filter back in this thing? Heck no! Check this out. It comes with a TRD performance air filter. So, I get to install this. This is awesome. Oh, it comes with a sticker. What does it say? This vehicle is equipped with a washable, reusable TRD performance air filter. Do not throw away! Clean filter archived at service intervals. Use only TRD performance air filter cleaning kit available through your local Toyota or Scion dealer. And it also sounds like it's not one that you oil. I will read the instructions though, just to make sure that that is, yeah, doesn't look like we oil it. See, I swear I didn't do anything to this filter, though I will say that it did feel a little oily, though I thought it was just the feel of that special red TRD rubber surround. Oh well, now I know. Wow, all right, look at that. Now we're gonna fill coolant. I'm gonna put this cover on, and of course, our grill. You remember this thing, if you watched my videos before, you know I love my little coolant fill thingy. Get this sucker under a vacuum. All right, well this is super exciting. I've just filled up both cooling systems, and now I've got the little pump running. Down there, our little pump is running, and I'm purging the air out of it. You can see that we've got coolant in there, and it is moving it around and doing its thing, so I just keep on topping it off. For filling the radiator and the engine cooling system, I did that the traditional way, using my favorite tool, as you saw me just show there, the coolant lift pump. And if you're interested in that tool or more about how I'll vacuum fill the cooling system, I'll link that video right above right now. And then for filling the Supercharger cooling system, which of course is a separate little system, it's pretty cool the way you wire it in. You just turn the ignition key to ignition on, not engine on, just ignition on, and that little pump will start to cycle. So I just turn that key to ignition on, because I had my battery charger on the vehicle the entire time, so I'm not draining the battery out, and that coolant pump just cycled through and burped any air out. And as you can probably tell by the color, the Supercharger cooling system uses the exact same coolant as the engine cooling system. And then after several drive cycles, I checked the level of the Supercharger cooling system, and it was fine. It was pretty good. That's all I needed to burp that cooling system. So here you go, I'm in TIS, and underneath the active test, you can see I'm going to choose this one, which is control the fuel pump and speed. Currently the fuel pump is off. Let's turn it on. I can hear it. And let's check for leaks. Also, this is going to prime everything, so I'm not going to be causing like a super hard start or anything like that. So typically from here, if there was an issue, you would smell it. Fuel smell is very strong. I'm not seeing or smelling anything, which is a great sign. I'd definitely be smelling it by now. Okay. I guess all that's left to do right now is start it up. So I got nothing to lose. Let's do that. And then we're just gonna make sure that the pulleys are all aligned and everything's good to go. So we'll see. That was easy. Oh man. Woo! This thing's cool. After the excitement of that initial startup, I let the engine just sit in idle and get up to operating temperature, and then I revved it up pretty high, letting everything burn off, especially all of that PB blaster and the new gaskets that I was using. You can see there's quite a bit of smoke going on here, and the sound that you're hearing in the background, like the clicking and clacking, believe it or not, that's actually a bearing going out in the AC compressor that's been like that for the past 7 years. Ooh, check it out. We got some exhaust stuff burning off over there. That's exciting. We're getting out some coolant bubbles. Awesome! Last things I want to cover before I show you our last dyno experience post Supercharger are, of course, the tune and the gauges. First, the tune. There are so many options out there, but I played it safe. I went with the TRD tune, which of course comes with the TRD kit and is downloadable from the Toyota Scan tool. Now you get one chance at a flash on the CCU, apparently. So you can actually drive it like it is before the tune. Obviously you don't want to drive it very far. It's gonna throw check engine light, it's gonna run super rich, it's gonna run terribly. But if this is something that you don't want to do yourself, you don't feel confident, go ahead and drive to the dealership or get it towed to the dealership, and it costs about 150 bucks to get the tune put on your vehicle. Now, you can go with an aftermarket tune as well. They're gonna be a little bit more aggressive, but I decided to play it safe because, like I said, we drove to SEMA and back right after I installed this Supercharger. There was less than 1,000 miles on the Supercharger, the entire system, when we made that incredible trek through the desert on a crazy timeline. Wasn't stressful at all. So that was just the choice that I made. Eventually, do we want to do a more aggressive tune? Well, maybe, but right now we're just enjoying the TRD tune. I'll tell you, it feels amazing. So that covers the tune. Next, the gauges. Now, these are not, of course, connected to the ECU because we don't have an aftermarket standalone system. These are just two basic gauges that we decided to add on. One being a boost pressure sensor. We wanted to be able to see the boost and the vacuum, you know, just see what we got. And then the other one, of course, was that air fuel ratio gauge. So I had an Innovate laying around that I used from another Supra and just put it on the truck. I'm not plumbing it into the ECU at all. I'm just literally connecting power and ground to the gauge, and then of course plugging in the sensor. That's pretty much it. Just ran the wiring through a hole in the firewall, ran it up underneath the dash, and then up to the steering wheel where those two gauges sit. The boost gauge is super cool. I'm actually really excited to tell you about this one too, because I did not know this was possible. We actually completely customized this gauge from Speed Hut. We custom chose the bezel, the size, the background image, and then also how much boost pressure we wanted. You don't want to get a boost pressure gauge that can show you 20 PSI when your Supercharger only makes about 5 PSI. You want to see the needle actually move. We actually may even make another custom gauge for the wideband to match the boost pressure sensor as well, because we loved it so much. The background color actually matches the wrap that he has on the kitchen in the rear of the Tacoma. So kind of tying everything all together. How he has them mounted on the steering wheel, I have that bracket linked in the description below. Super easy install for that as well. And that's just the way we chose to set it up. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything with the Supercharger install. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any further questions. I'd be so happy to answer them for you. And without further ado, let's head to the dyno right now and let's see the results of all of my hard work? Was it worth it? Was it worth it, you ask? I don't know, you tell me. Let's go.
So when we were at 205 before, we're 260 right now. But they must have raised the rev limiter a little bit because it made its peak power. It's still climbing out the back.
Wow.
So that's all the way to the rev limiter right there at 5,800 and 270.
I can't believe it. That was way more than I thought we were going to get out of it.
That's why you say it feels like big difference.
That's a great result.
That is a great result.
But we'll try to do one more where I come in sooner so we can get the torque.
Okay,
even
got
the
it.
Torque, you know, where before we peaked 4,200 at 180, you know, and now, you know, it's a flat torque curve all the way across.
All right, so that's our dyno numbers. Remember, at the beginning, bone stock at the wheels, we had about 200 horsepower. I think 207 is what we ended up with, or 205. And then we got two different dyno poles with the supercharger installed. The first one, before the heat soaking happened. We got 272 horsepower at the wheels. And then our second pole, once the supercharger was a little bit hotter, was around 257 horsepower. So not bad at all. What do you guys think? Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Clearly, I think it was. The install was super fun, super enjoyable. I love the sounds that it makes. And just from sitting in the passenger seat, I think there's a huge difference I can tell, especially in torque. I mean, keep in mind, we're pulling around hundreds and hundreds of pounds of gear, and the truck is still super responsive. It's like, as they say in the forums, it should have felt from the factory. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you for doing all of the things, especially for your positive comments, because that really keeps me going and keeps me motivated to make more videos for you guys. All right, thank you so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!
Clemmy. Hello. Hi, Clemmy. Hi, Athena. Hi, Demeter. Hi, Clemmy. Hello. Hello. Hi. Hi, sweetheart. Hi, Demeter. Hi, honey.